What's going on, gang? Time for another horror movie review. This time it's Murder on the Tube with the 2004 British horror movie Creep. So the movie's directed by Christopher Smith. It stars Vaz Blackwood and Franca Potente. So the movie essentially follows Kate, a German woman living in London. After she decides to head to a nightclub on her own, she falls asleep on the London Underground. She ends up locked in a station and decides to try and find her way around. She's involved in a brief altercation with a work colleague who followed her to the station, but eventually it transpires that something more sinister is afoot, as the people she meets along the way, including a homeless couple, fall victim to a killer. Along the way she runs into George, who is a maintenance worker in London's sewers who has been captured by this maniac. The pair try for the remainder of the film to fight their way out of their certain death. I gotta say, this is a really cool concept for a horror movie. I don't live in London anymore, but I used to take the tube quite a lot, and especially at night when it's very quiet, it can be a real, almost spiritual, I guess, experience in terms of, kind of cosmic horror. Yeah, it's deadly quiet, aside from a couple of banging and scraping noises that you hear every so often from the line. And obviously being underground, they're very echoey and reverby. And you can feel the trains pushing wind through the tunnels. So there's a very strange atmosphere to an underground station. When you stand on the platform. In addition to that, just the fact that, obviously the London Underground is underground, it's a subway system, makes it all just a little bit kind of cold feeling, I guess. You're sitting there in very old, probably usually quite smelly trains, and if you're on there late at night and there's only maybe 3 or 4 people on the train, it can be a little bit disconcerting. And I think Creep channels that really well. It taps into a fear that if you're a Londoner you will probably understand, which is the fear of falling asleep on the tube and ending up in Clapham Junction, that sort of thing. Although it takes it to its, the logical extreme of ending up trapped in the station overnight and having to make your way through the subway tunnels while a serial killer is after you. I definitely think that Christopher Smith, in directing this, shows his influences quite boldly on his sleeve. He's a known video nasty fan. He appeared in the Moral Panic censorship and videotape documentary talking about his appreciation for the video nasties. And it wouldn't surprise me if Christopher Smith is a big Anthropophagus fan, because this movie definitely channels a little bit of Anthropophagus for me. In terms of its kind of gore content and the general vibe of the movie is very influenced by Anthropophagus, and I definitely think the appearance of the killer has a lot in common with the killer in Anthropophagus. If you're into sleaze cinema, incidentally, go and check out Anthropophagus. That's a great movie. I've got to say, this movie really, there's very little to hold it back. I mean, it's got really cool dialogue, actually, which is something I wasn't expecting. It all feels very believable, very natural, and at the same time is quite witty and very interesting dialogue, which is a lot of fun. The film puts across its spooky atmosphere very well, of course, with the kind of enclosed, trapped setting. It does almost have like a haunted house movie feel, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but it does. Coupled with that, the movie does a really, really good job of building the tension, with the kind of violent content. It's all kind of very well staged, and then coupled with that, the kind of feeling of being watched and being chased. There's a lot of camera work that puts a really nice feeling of that into you. I've got to say, overall, Creep, it's a very good movie. It does have its drawbacks though. It doesn't really have much more, I think, going on under the surface than what you kind of see on screen, which, obviously is not always necessary in a movie, but it's nice if you can kind of get it all. That's the thing that this movie is kind of a little bit short on. Also, I've got to say, I found the ending a little bit anticlimactic. Or rather the kind of climactic scene of the movie I found a bit anticlimactic. The actual ending was actually quite cool. The kind of gag that they ended on was quite clever. But I've got to say, other than those couple of problems, this is a really solid nuts and bolts movie that I would suggest checking out if you want something that has got a very interesting concept behind it and is very well executed and is very enjoyable as a watch. So yeah, I think Creep's worthy of an 8 out of 10. It's an effective horror movie that does its job, is very entertaining, and feels original enough in some of its concepts. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed this video. There's a link in the description to my podcast. It's called Ironcast. I would really appreciate you going and checking that out. It's all about music. If you're into music, please go and check it out. We cover all sorts of genres. You'll definitely find some music that you like there. Ultimately, the podcast is, I guess, the more important thing than this channel. As much as I appreciate you liking, commenting, subscribing, viewing, all of that, please do go and check out the podcast. That's my primary focus, is the podcast overall. Thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you very soon.